Botanic Gibsons with the intention that applicants wanting to operate a cannabis production facility must undergo a site-specific zoning amendment or a temporary use permit in order to operate. So the proposed zoning amendment looks to provide a site-specific provision to allow for a cannabis production facility with a new section added to the light industrial zone 1, specifying the civic address and the legal description of 1037 Venture Way. Staff have determined that the proposed use is consistent with the service commercial business center land use designation in the OCP, and a cannabis policy has been drafted for specific applications like this. So staff have reviewed the application with the procedures outlined in the draft cannabis retail production facility policy and have determined that it meets the criteria in the draft policy. However, staff were unable to measure the distance from existing cannabis producers due to the limited information that was provided by Health Canada. So given the consistency with the OCP and the consistency with the draft policy, staff recommends that the amendment bylaw be forwarded to tonight's council meeting for first and second readings, and then that a public hearing be scheduled at 6:30 on May 5th, 2020.
Okay, thank you very much, Katie. Sorry, I'm trying a different background.
Hey, nice.
You're hanging on my wall. Okay, thank you very much, Katie. Sorry, did I interrupt? Are you done your presentation?
I'm done. You're good.
Great. Okay. So can I get a motion to receive the report, please? Councillor Kroll, Mayor Beamish, all in favor? All in favor, thank you. Open for discussion. And I would ask that just do exactly what you're doing, raise your hand and I'll address you. Any comments? Mayor Beamish?
I have a couple questions about this, but my first one concerns the draft policy. I am a little concerned that we move ahead. We've already done that in the past, and we've ended up perhaps with a mistake in the community, moving ahead of the policy. We have a draft policy, and I wonder if we shouldn't. My view is that we should complete the policy before we start implementing it, because we might find ourselves making exceptions that to a policy that gets amended and gets changed before it's finally adopted. And that's one of my concerns with this project anyway, is that we're moving ahead of having the policy completed for council to say that we are within policy to do this. We're not. We're within draft policy at this point in time.
Councillor Kroll?
I'm sort of on the same page as the mayor. I sort of would have, we have this draft policy that says that we're not going to have the commercial production of cannabis within the town of Gibsons. Now we're getting someone asking for a variance to that. And I would have expected to have seen a proposal for a building that was going to house this project rather than a project that ultimately is going to have a building. It seems we're putting the cart before the horse.
Councillor Lumley?
Unmute myself. I'd like to, I have agreement with the mayor and Councillor Kroll. I'd like to take it even a step further. I wondered if we could put a process together where, I'd also like to see the business plan or some sort of, this almost falls in the same area of like liquor licensing. I would imagine they would have to get some licenses that we'd be able to either kibosh or say no or yes to. And it's exactly like, say, the Gibson's Tap Works or 101 or anybody that's creating something. When they come to council, we get a building plan. We get to know like kind of like what they're doing and what their potential is. And right now it's just a property full of sea cans, right? So without any knowledge of what their prospective operations are going to look like, are they going to be employing local people? Like, I don't know. I mean, there's just kind of like no information here to like approve this because it is a variance. So I'd just like to see more information. If that comes through the policy, like a business plan and you know, construction and so on and so forth, I think that'd be good.
Okay, thank you. Are there other comments? Councillor DeAndrade. You're on mute, Councillor.
I think I'm in agreement, because if there's I initially didn't have a concern, but because I thought this is such a highly regulated industry. But I get it. We don't have the policy yet. If you feel some discomfort, I would support that until we have a policy draft that we feel confident.
Okay, so I would like to make a comment. I'm in agreement with what people are saying, but I'm just going to play devil's advocate here for a second. We did just approve a cannabis distribution facility,
Yeah.
And we don't have a policy. So I'm not saying that I'm in disagreement with the direction of this conversation, but I'm just reminding you of that.
Yeah.
Mayor Beamish.
I think if I could, the primary difference is that one was already going through the provincial process as well. We were actually commenting on a provincial application at that time as well. And this one has, I'm not aware of any kind of application forwarded for federal licensing, because this will have to be licensed. And this is the first of this type of business. We were still within that kind of limitation of saying, well, we've got 3, we'll maintain 3 and with the initial group, but this is going to require a federal permit at some stage. We will be asked to comment on it. But it's also the first one of perhaps several that we might get applications for in the community. And my sense is we didn't have the policy at all when we entered into the retail outlet side of things, and which has caused us some grief for one of those outlets. But now I think we have the chance to say, let's get the policy done. And then as a result of the policy, staff are not kind of having to interpret and saying that's within the draft policy. Well, the draft policy may change. And then where are we? We now that we then have another one that's kind of an oddity.
Okay, thank you for that, Mayor. So we have some recommendations from, actually, before I do that, is there any other comments? Cliff or Scott, do you have any thoughts on this application? Cliff?
Yeah, I would just say quickly that in line with what Stafford was saying, not having any information about this project, I think, is the biggest barrier for me. I mean, I think we're right now using this in kind of the way we've discussed, which is, one-off consideration, spot rezoning almost. And I think this is a great indication of how well that can work, because this is just, we have nothing to go on here. I would, though, in general say I'm supportive of something like this happening, provided they do, of course, go along with the provincial and federal regulations. I mean, I understand local supply to be quite an issue for the industry. So I do want to just say that in general, I'm open to something like this, and even in that neighborhood. But yeah, just knowing nothing about this, I mean, I don't even know how we could be talking about this.
Okay. Scott, did you?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that, everyone. I think it's a great location for something like that, but I mean, it makes sense to have more information. And I think another difference too with the previous discussion that we had was there was an existing building there as well. So we kind of seem to have a better understanding of what it would be in a way. This one, I mean, there's going to be a new building that who knows what that's going to be like.
Okay, so definitely hearing consensus then. So we have a recommendation from staff that the zoning amendment bylaw number 1065-57/2020 be forwarded directly to the next council meeting for first and second readings. Obviously, I take it we're not moving forward with the recommendations from staff. So what do we want to be recommending then, or recommending to council? that this be, this application be deferred perhaps until the zoning, until the policy is completed.
In favor of that? Yeah.
Lindsay, are you somewhere out there in the ether? Where are you? There you are.
Hi.
My wording person.
I think what you went with is pretty appropriate, so that this application be deferred until such time as the cannabis production policy is passed.
Can I be more specific though? I'd like to, in terms of detail, can we specifically reference the application for a cannabis production facility and at 1037 Venture Way be deferred, so we know specifically what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Councillor Lumley?
Well, should we say any cannabis facility until the policy? I mean, if people keep coming forward and they keep coming on the agenda because it's not that specific address.
Yeah.
I hear what the mayor's saying, but I'm just not,
Yeah, sure.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would support that. Okay, so then the wording would be, would you mind reading it back to us then, Lindsay, if we're going to go with Councillor Lumley's suggestion that we suggest that any production facility? Are you wanting to say something else, Councillor Lumley, or are you just waving?
You know what? While Katie's still here, I was just going to ask her, have these guys exhausted or have attempted, like, because you've obviously dealt with them. I know there's a couple of production facilities that are inactive up there. Do you know anything, like have they attempted to, lease or, I'm just curious because I know one of the guys I play hockey with, he's got a pretty large facility that a grow op has vacated and it's empty right now. I don't know if they've, or they're just set on producing a facility of their own.
So the applicant owns this lot. So he was looking at what he was going to build. So the town had contacted the applicant or the owner of the property back last year when we were trying to clear up the CCANs. And so we had asked them to build up a building. If you're gonna be using the property, please build a permanent structure. And so when we had our discussion, it became clear that if he was going to build a structure, he needed some direction from council to know that he was the structure that he would like to build would be allowed in the town of Gibsons. And so that's why he came forward with the zoning amendment application.
Do we have an understanding of the process for how a production facility gets approved by the federal government?
It's under Health Canada. Now, because it's federal, we still need to understand the process. The licenses that have been provided or given out so far, the town hasn't been involved in that process. So we don't actually know who's licensed and who's not. And it's a process that we'd have to look into and review.
So Katie, I mean, I understand what the applicant's looking for. They're looking for some type of comfort that where council sits generally with this type of industry in this type of location or in that general area, right? That he's kind of looking for a bit of comfort, right? Before he proceeds with investment into this business.
Yes.
Is there any, is it appropriate or possible to have a discussion around that, just generally speaking, knowing that obviously that we would still defer until the policy is completed and that he'd have to submit a full application at the time? Could we have a general discussion about this area for this type of business as a council or as a committee?
Yeah, that would be helpful. If perhaps some direction as to whether you think that this is the area that you would like to see these facilities, that would be useful. Yeah.
Do we have a resolution on the floor right now?
Sorry, can you repeat that, Mayor Beamish?
Do we have a resolution right now?
There was nothing moved. You were just
Okay.
asking after wording.
Councillor DeAndrade?
Just question, is there any idea when the bylaw will be ready?
Policy.
Cannabis bylaw?
I'll move that over to planner one.
Hey, so the policy right now is council asked that it receive some feedback from the community. So right at the moment, I believe we were going to have a survey go out, and I believe there was meant to be an information session. That's not been done so far.
Yeah.
It might take some time.
So, I mean, generally speaking, I think it is in an appropriate spot if we are going to allow production in the town of Gibsons. I think, you know, I don't know where else it could go. I know from having these discussions with the production retail facilities in council that we have heard a number of concerns about smell. And I would definitely want the applicant to understand that that will be a concern of mine if and when they bring an application forward to us. So, you know, it is a very tight neighborhood. The zoning, in my mind, seems appropriate. Like the location seems appropriate, but they will have to definitely come back to us with some pretty good details on how they expect to manage the smell issue in order for me to support a project of that nature going in that location. And that's as much detail as I could provide at this time. Mayor Beamish?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see on your screen, but Director of Planning is trying to get your attention.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I can't see that.
Okay.
I don't know how to, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Hello, Director of Planning.
Hi, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to speak up about the cannabis policy. So we had intended to put out a survey to start engaging the community on that, but then COVID-19 hit. And so we've sort of held off on that survey because we've also launched a housing needs assessment survey, and Scredo was also putting out a survey about business continuity. So, and also right now, a bunch of people are probably online applying for EI or some supports from the government. So we didn't want to bombard too many surveys out on the community. And that's sort of another conversation we're probably going to need to have about which projects should we be delaying because of COVID-19. And we're also looking at how we can engage the community differently on some of our active applications. And that means most likely we'll have to go to surveys. So yeah, what's the appropriate number of surveys to have active at one time? So that's the update on the cannabis. We do need to engage still. And in terms of the consistency with the OCP in this area, the service commercial business area was identified in the policy, in the draft policy, as the area for cannabis production facilities. So in that sense, it is consistent with the OCP, and it would be staff's recommendation to put any cannabis production facility in that location.
Yeah.
Mayor Beamish?
In the policy, can we limit the number of cannabis production facilities we have in any one area?
Yes.
Yeah, my reason for asking that is I really do hate to see industrially zoned land being used for, in essence, agriculture, because it takes out future opportunities. We don't have we have a limited supply of land that could be used for other kinds of industrial activities. And the synergies of industrial organizations or businesses working together is that they share resources. Like that's the huge value of the fastener store being up there and the shipbuilding being up there and everything else. There's a resource sharing going on. And then suddenly you make the majority of the businesses or a good part of the area becomes agriculture, and you lose that reason for being there. And that's something we really want to be conscious of. I do know that there's at least one other active grow up there right now. So that they will likely be coming forward as well. And the building that Stafford, Councillor Lumley referenced could also be activated again. Yet there's still quite a bit of land that is kind of south of Highway 101 that is not being used at all for anything. And it almost makes some sense to be down in that area. So anyway, just my thoughts anyway. That's why we have to have the discussion in the policy.
Okay, so perhaps we should just go back to the deferral recommendation then. Lindsay, could you read out what we currently have?
Yep. So the current wording that you were going towards, and let me know if this is accurate, that all applications for cannabis production facilities be deferred until after the cannabis production policy is approved.
Okay, Councillor Kroll, is there a seconder? Oh, sorry.
Just a correction in there, sorry. It's the cannabis policy. It's not specific to production. It's for production and retail sales.
I'll make that correction.
Thanks.
Okay, so Councillor Kroll, was there a seconder? Mayor Beamish, are all in favor of that motion? Great, okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on to 3.2 on our agenda then. Again, this will be Katie. And we have an application for a development permit for form and character, DPA 5 for 263 Gower Point Road. So, sorry, Councillor Lumley.
I have to recuse myself from this portion of the meeting, so I'm going to actually get out of Zoom. I won't be back for the last portion because that's pretty much we've been through it a few times. So I will see you guys at 7 o'clock.
Okay, just before you leave, Councillor Lumley, I believe you need to state why you're recusing yourself. Is that correct?
I'm leaving for the conflict. I have to state why the conflict is.
I believe so.
State the conflict.
Pecuniary, I guess, wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, thank you. We'll see you at 7. Okay, bye.
Cheers.
Okay, so we're going to be looking at 263 Gower Point Road. So the Planning and Development Committee considered the development permit application for form and character on February 3rd for 263 Gower Point Road. At that time, the PDC and council asked that the developer create a more accessible amenity space by removing some of the planters to create tiered seating and an inviting access to Molly's Lane, and that the revised drawings then be brought back to the PDC for review. So the applicants have revised the drawings with the following. On page 3 of the staff report, figure 2 shows that the architect has altered the internal layout from 5 commercial units to 3 commercial units and 4 residential units. This has resulted in some changes to the Gower Point Road elevation. So there's now 3 storefronts, which has been reduced from 5 in the original design. And it also has a recessed residential entrance that's been added. Page 5, figure 6 also provides you with a view of that Gower Point Road frontage. Page 4 of the staff report, figures 4 and 5 show the building length has been reduced by 1 meter. And they've pulled the building back from the School Road property line in order to open up the views to the harbour and provide some more outdoor space for the plaza. And in this area, they've added a staircase that goes up from the corner units up to the roof deck, and it provides an opportunity for public access for a future business. And you can see that in figures 2, 3, and 4. In figure 4, you can also see that they've created a terrace seating area that steps down School Road. And lastly, they've changed the parking level to comply with the current certificate of compliance, and that removes any need for excavation. So going back to figure 3 in the staff report, it shows the location of a transformer that's on School Road, and it's impeding the access to the public stairs that they've designed. So the applicants have been in touch with BC Hydro, who have stated that the transformer can't be removed entirely, but it can be moved southwards along School Road at cost. So figure 3 shows the proposed relocation, which is by the planter towards the access to Molly's Lane. Hopefully you can all see that. So staff have reviewed the proposal with the development permit area number 5 guidelines and have determined that the form and character of the building meets the guidelines. And we recommend that DP 2019-18 be authorized and the recommendations be forwarded to tonight's council meeting for adoption. Now the applicants are in the audience somewhere. So we've got Justin Bennett and Grant Gillies, and they're able to respond to any questions that you might have too. So hopefully that's the end of my introduction. And I'll let you.
Okay, thank you, Katie. So can I get a motion to receive the report, please? Councillor Crowell, Mayor Beamish, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Discussion. Councillor Crowell. You're on
I
mute.
really like what's happened here, particularly with the introduction of the commercial units, because in the previous presentation, it seemed that those loft spaces were possibly going to be difficult to utilize. I have and the fact that there's an elevator. One of the questions I have with respect to the elevator is currently, from an accessibility point of view, from the Gower Point street level to the Molly's Lane level, access for anyone that has any sort of mobility issues, it's difficult with the incline on School Road. So would this elevator be accessible to the public to transition from Gower Point to the Molly's Lane level, or is it just strictly exclusive to building use?
Over to Katie.
So currently the elevator is within the residential component of the building. So it would be for residential use rather than for general public.
Other comments? Councillor DeAndretti?
Yes, I appreciate the beauty of the project. I think it's awesome in many ways. The change, obviously, it's even made the look even better. I have one big concern with, actually, thanks Leslie Ann and Katie for addressing all my parking questions, because I was very concerned. So I'm not going to bring the parking because you have addressed, but what I saw with I'm concerned with the use of this area at the main level, because there's no way that for a passerby it looks like a public area. So with the addition of the stairs and with the fact that there's also a door there, it would imply anyone passing that this is a private. So my concern is pristine public land being used for a private business. So I start thinking, because obviously the intent was good, so we don't have a steep grade, I believe, from the building to the next, so it softens. But I wonder if council would be willing to sell this piece of land to the developer, and we can use the funds for affordable housing, which we need very much, because I cannot believe that any public would use this area. I think it will be impossible.
Okay, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I completely followed that. Which area are you referring to that is?
No, the one with the picnic table. The corner, the area for the unit corner, the corner unit, sorry.
Okay.
I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, it makes sense for the unit per se. They will have incredible space for their customers, but implying that the public would understand that this is public, I think is impossible. Unless there's a big sign, stairs going up, cafe or restaurant, and there arrow saying public use, but I think this will be awkward. So
Well,
that's,
I mean, that's what we have on the stairs going down to the Smitty Oyster House, and you know, we have signs at the top of the stairs there. Otherwise, you would never know Smitty's was there. So it's interesting that you mentioned signage, though, because that was one of the comments that I had. It was actually my 9-year-old daughter, to be honest. She looked at it and she was like, "Oh, that's cool," but it needs a sign. If someone's coming into our four corners, the view, I don't know what elevation or view it, but when you first approach, what direction is that? So figure 2, you know, when you're first coming into Gibson's from Marine Drive and you see the end of the building, it would be nice if there was some kind of signage there that referred to the building of some sort, like marketplace, or, you know, like something that, just like how Molly's has welcome to Molly's. No, I'm not saying that has to be that big, but something at the end of that building that kind of defines it as a commercial entity. But that's just a minor detail. Minor detail. Councillor Kroll.
I think the signage would be probably implied by whatever commercial business was in that corner unit. Also, there's a note in the chat from Grant Gillies that the picnic table isn't there.
Yeah, I'm not sure which. If you mean the dining tables at the top, on the top patio.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to break in for a moment, just with management of the meeting. Grant Giles, I've turned his audio on, so if you want to invite him to speak or have questions, he's able to now respond.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Grant.
Hello, how's everyone?
Good.
This is very unique.
We're all stumbling through it. Mayor Beamish.
Yeah, just a question, perhaps to Katie, are the stairs, is that within their property envelope, or are they over the public space?
These stairs are on the private property.
They're on the private property, so and they
Correct.
overhang. Okay, yeah.
And I don't have unfortunately, I don't have the plans in front of me, but I'm trying to go by memory. And I
Right.
think it actually shows a table on.
There's a table, yes.
And I don't think that is the intent to have any public private function eatery outside there.
Right.
We have thought to move it up to the mezzanine deck, and therefore the stairs would be an exit from the mezzanine deck. I believe it's a code requirement when we go above a certain area of the unit. Over.
Director of Planning.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it took me a while to figure out how to unmute from the speaker view. The stairs, sorry, I'm just going to correct this. The stairs are on public property. So if you look at figure 5 on the staff report, there's a blue line, a heavy blue line that shows the property line. And then there are stairs that, and the hydro boxes are on town property. And then there's also this picnic table that's sort of straddling the property line between the private property and public property.
The stairs I was referring to, Director, were the ones that are going up to the upper deck, up to the upper deck of the building.
Oh, okay, that's
Do
correct.
appear- I do see
Yeah.
in that diagram, they appear to be within the property line.
Those are within the property line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I misunderstood that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll take a crack at a few comments. I too think it's a wonderful project. I'm really impressed. I'm really pleased to see that that we're going with a roof, and by pitched roof, I mean the design that's here and not a shed roof. I think it's much more in keeping with the form and character of Gibson's Landing. I think that's great.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the board and batten siding and the kind of industrial look of it. I think it fits in very nicely. I just have a few minor requests, if I could. That's sort of what this committee is about, so I'll put them out there. I think it would be really nice. I think if we could, if it was possible to keep, it's got a really neat combination of mixing traditional with sort of a modern look. But if the modernist could be softened just a little bit by including eave troughs, or not eaves, is that what they're called? Like the roof line, the roof ends flush with the building, and I think
The gable, that's called the gable. Gable end.
Gable end.
Mhm.
Sorry.
No worries, it's all good.
I think I think if we could pull the gable ends out a bit, it would give it a little bit more of a. It would just soften the modernist a little bit.
And
So
cover the stairs.
it would cover the stairs. Oh, is that what you're saying?
No, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that'd be great. And in reference to this, I'm sorry, give me 1 second. I'm looking at the checklist that staff put together for us, and under roofs and canopies. So this is on page 33 of the agenda. The category called roofs and canopies, and it says, does it, and this is in reference to how well this proposal meets the guidelines for this DPA. And it references things, cupola roofs, especially at corner locations, are encouraged. Obviously, it doesn't. It says wood shingled canopies are encouraged. Care should be taken selecting size and mounting and will not be too dark, discouraging pedestrian activity. It says no. And then ornamental pediments which may contain signage are encouraged, and that says no. So there's just a little, oh, I guess you can't see it.
I can see it.
A group here that is no. And so this goes back to my desire to see some type of a signage at the end of the building that somehow define the building as being a unique feature, I think would be valuable. And if we had the gable ends extending out, I think that would soften the modernist. And I was also curious about trim around windows and whatnot, and whether or not you're bringing the siding right down to the window frames, or whether or not there's any kind of trim, because trim would soften the modernist as well. Maybe I answered that.
All right, I'll respond to that. Definitely some sort of overhanging gable end is a great idea. I agree. Before we were at property line, so I don't know if we were able to do that. So now we have a bit more space to do so. Regarding signage, I think it would have to be, we would make application to the appropriate authorities in Gibson's to do something fairly dynamic and really pretty, kind of like Molly's Reach sign is an iconic visual as you enter the town. So something very artistic, and for sure, I totally agree with you, but we would still have to make application. And then also for some of the signage along the front, we haven't designed any signage. I think that would be, we're talking about a small bakery and maybe a cafe on the two forward commercial small spaces. And then, yeah, just, some trim around the window, I believe would really soften it as well. Maybe a white trim.
Great.
I'll leave it at that.
That's
I'm
great.
not just, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you hearing my thoughts. Do others have any comments? Councillor DeAndretti?
I would like council to respond to what I have said, because I feel it will be difficult for the public to understand that this area where the picnic table is actually a public area. I think there will be a trend that it will not be used. So the question is, are we putting a signage really explaining that this is public space? Or even in the event that I mentioned, perhaps this could be a private space, and the town would be willing even to sell this strip of property.
Okay, Mayor Beamish, is this in relation to Councillor DeAndre's comment or question? You're on mute, sorry. Still on mute.
Yeah.
There we go.
Off. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think rather than sell a parcel, because it's actually not a small thing, and we always get in trouble when we do that sort of thing. I would say you can do it by way of encroachment agreement, and actually or lease the space to the building. And we've done that. You'll notice a little bakery, or not the bakery, but the other little shop down Lower Gibson's now that does the crepes. We've just entered into an encroachment agreement with them to allow them to put table and chairs on the sidewalk. And they ensure that, they maintain it, they look after it, they have use of it, not exclusive use. The encroachment agreement doesn't give it somebody exclusive use, but it does require them to provide insurance for the use that they use it for. So my sense is we might want to go by way of encroachment agreement on that portion, and to the building itself. If they find a need for it, they might not actually, depend upon what that business is in there, whether or not they want to put tables and chairs out on the public space, or whether there's enough space under the stair cover to put tables and chairs out into. But I like the idea of having that as an additional viewpoint for people who are visiting the town to be able to go up there. And I don't know if you get a water view from it, but it'd be nice if you did.
May I speak to that?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. I don't think that the people I'm talking to would like to have their table out there anyway. I don't think that's the best place to be if you're having a bite to eat or socializing. I think I'm going to call it the money spot is up on the mezzanine looking over the marina and Molly's Reach. And I think that's a preference. I would propose to do something similar to a CAC and do a nice bench out there. Perhaps it's covered, so if you're walking your dog, you can have a coffee out there.
Oh, nice idea.
Thanks. Taking notes from the last meeting. But no, making that a more of a public space with benches, and so maybe there's some benches that face one another, or they're on 45 facing each other and facing out to the street, so that's inviting. And we don't need it as to use that space for sure. Over.
Okay, Councillor DeAndrade.
I still, I don't think my question has been answered. How can we ensure that the public understands that this is a public space? Because from my point of view, if I'm walking, I will not understand that. I would see this is a private area.
Put some signage up there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that, some signage. And I think something simple like a drinking fountain at the end of it, or let's say like a dog watering fountain at the end of it, where you understand that there's a public use that you can walk towards it. Something like that might be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Identify it as a park. You know, it's when you go by a park. I'm in Whistler, and I just went by this remote little space on the walk, but it identifies this little house as actually public park. So you realize the signs there. There's a public bench and maybe a bike rack. So it's consistent with the rest of the community.
It could also be interesting to work with, like, even the town, the museum, on some kind of educational historic sign about Gibson's Landing or something of that nature.
Maybe we could keep the bow of the Persephone or something like that. Maybe that's transom or something. Who knows?
Don't want to start cutting up the boat now.
Yeah, right.
I think David's probably got some archives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just go back to my agenda here.
Clifford was trying to get your attention.
Yes.
Oh, my apologies. Who was? Sorry. Oh, sorry, Clifford?
Yeah, he actually sort of addressed what I was going to say, so it's mostly taken care of. I would say in general, though, that I think this new revision really does address the problems I had with the project last time, specifically the issue with that space being a tall welcoming. I definitely think the comments about whether or not this is identifiably a public space are valid, but I agree with Scott that I think, we're in a place that can be addressed with signage and furniture. So I really like the revision.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Beamish.
Grant, do you have a name for this building?
Well, we were going to call it the Persephone. Kind of
Yeah.
goes with the flow.
Yeah.
Whatever you end up naming it, I think that's what needs to go at the end of the building when you first
sure.
come up.
That's right. Should be, yeah, it could be good. Yeah.
Maybe we cut the boat in half and try and, it's so heavy though, never mind. It's,
Have it
come-
sticking out of it.
yeah, right.
Thinking out as a gable end.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have a number of a few recommendations here from staff. And so I'll just read them out to everyone. And that the Planning and Development Committee recommends DP 2019-18 be authorized. And further, that these recommendations be forwarded directly to the next council meeting for adoption. Now, I'm going to defer to Lindsay here for a minute. My understanding is that we're changing some of these operational, how we're doing things with regard to direct referrals to council. Is that correct?
No, we're not changing anything. I just tried to provide a document to prepare council for what might be coming directly.
Okay, great. I thought you weren't as comfortable going directly to council with the format, but if you're okay with it, that's fine. Okay, so those are the recommendations. Do you want me to read them again, or can I get a motion to, is that a motion to support them, Mayor Beamish?
Well, it's a motion to support it, but I would like to add to the recommendation, and specifically when these recommendations come to council, they don't generally come back up with a full report because we now see them on the council agenda. Now, what I'd like to see is a recommendation, and then the Planning Development Committee recommends DP 2019-18 with the legal description of the property and the address included in there, so that people who are looking at the agenda in the future can see exactly where we're talking about. And it's something that would mean nothing. There's no reference to anybody with that if they just see it that way. But if we have that specified in the resolution, I think it's much more specific to this building for somebody looking at it. That's all. And then otherwise, I'll move the recommendation if you add the legal and the civic.
Okay, and I actually just realized I'd like to add something as well now that I think about it. But I'm going to move over to Councillor D'Andrade because she's got her hand up as well, and then we'll decide.
It's just about the suggestions you made, and again about the public area. I would like to see this translated in an extra recommendations, right? This will be added to these recommendations, right?
I was just thinking that as well. So I thank you for that. So can we do another and further that the gable ends get extended, trim around windows are included, signage at the end of the building is signage naming the building is included at the end, whatever that end is, and that signage or some other feature be included to signify public space.
Mhm.
What is it? What is that the north end of the building? I'm trying to.
Yes.
At the north end of the building. Lindsay, did you capture that by any chance?
I have, and further that, the gable ends, the trim, signage naming the building on the north end of the building, and signage for public space be a requirement.
So yeah, let me just help you with that. So that the gable ends be extended.
Yes.
The window trim be included. And then I think you got the rest of it.
Mhm.
Councilor Andretti.
I like the terminology that Chair Ledwig used that signify, because we are not specifying, might not be a written sign, but some, maybe how Scott Tech demonstrated, he might have a better language, but I think it's important because we are not necessarily talking about a specific sign, but something that signify, that make it explicit that this is a public area.
Great. So sorry to do this to you, Lindsay, but can I ask you to read it one more time? And
Okay,
then-
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand signage or how to word that. I have it down as signage that indicates it's a public space. Did council want to see a different terminology there?
And what did I say? Signage or other features,
That
features
signify.
signifies that it's a public space.
2 different signages.
Yeah.
One for public space and one to identify the
Building,
building itself.
just to make it a bit more inviting, so it doesn't look like you're approaching Gibson's Landing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
It's got to be.
Okay, I can read back what I have.
great, thank you.
And further that the gable ends be extended, window trim be included, signage naming the building incorporated on the north end of the building, and signage or other features to signify it is a public space.
Does that work for you, Councillor DeAndre, just that last part?
Yeah, I don't know if we need to designate specify this area, but I'm
Mhm.
happy. I mean, I don't know if the way Lindsay read, it means that this is in this specific picnic area. So I don't know if this can be fixed, but if people understand that, I'm happy. Thank you.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that. I support that. So I think we all know Councillor DeAndretti. So can I get a motion to support that? Councillor Kroll, Councillor DeAndretti, all in favor? All in favor, great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Grant, for calling in. It was
Thank you
great.
very much.
Good job, Grant.
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And I have to say, I like the look of Councillor Ladwig's interior design there. Maybe we'll have to incorporate that into the look. But everybody stay safe and stay healthy, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Bye. Okay, so moving on in our agenda, we've got 3.3, again from Katie. We've got a covenant amendment for 1000 Venture Way. So over to you, Katie.
Okay, so the Planning and Development Committee discussed the requested covenant amendment in the past meeting in March for the property at 1000 Venture Way. So this is a section 219 covenant that was registered on the title in 2018, and it speaks to ensuring that 39 housing units contained in the proposed live work development at 1000 Venture Way are used exclusively for market rental tenure. So the applicant has requested to amend this statement to remove a limit to the number of units that can be built and instead design the building within the zoning limitations, such as the height, setbacks, the lot coverage, and the FSR, which would allow the developer to increase the available number of rental units. So when this was discussed, council requested staff to go back to the developer and discuss that any additional units over the 39 that are in the original covenant be designated as affordable housing. So this staff report looked at what happened after that discussion. So we concluded the following. So the revenue of the building is determined on the internal square footage of the unit. So if you have a 900 square foot unit, that rental price is going to be higher than a 700 square foot unit. And this means that the total gross revenue of the building would be similar regardless of the housing types or the number of units. So if we had additional apartments beyond the 39 that was stated in the original covenant, if these were required to be rented at below market rent, the 39 rental units would need to subsidize these below market rental units in order to cover the general monthly financial obligations of this project. And then you would also need an administrative system that to ensure that these below market rental units are deemed affordable on a tenant by tenant basis. So the result would be an increase in rent for the 39 rental units to cover the administration and the subsidization of those added units. Moreover, when we increase the number of purpose-built rental units, it's not going to change the height, setbacks, or the lot coverage or the FSR of the proposed building, but it would provide more units for rental, which in turn could lower rents in the building, as if you can fit a few smaller units in there, then these rented out at a lower rate. So staff suggest that the opportunity to increase the number of purpose-built rental units is advantageous to the residents in the town of Gibsons. Staff have reviewed clause 2.0 and 3.0 of the section 219 covenant that was registered on the title. This is seen on page 5 of your staff report. And we note that because the covenant doesn't state that all of the units shall be exclusively used for market rental tenure, there's a possibility that further units might be able to be constructed in addition to those 39 units stated, and in accordance with the FSR of the zoning. So since the zoning, the live work zoning, requires that we need a covenant to secure 100% of the units or the apartment units as rental, staff recommend changing the wording of the covenant to ensure that at least 39 units are constructed, and then we tighten the language to prevent any alternative interpretation. So the recommendations are listed on page 1 of the staff report, and then the applicant, Julian Burtnick, is available for any questions you have.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Can I get a motion to receive the report, please? Councillor Kroll, Councillor D'Andrade, all in favor? Thank you. Discussion. No discussion. Katie, just so I understand, and I do apologize, it's been a busy time. So the developers, we can't really ask the developer to do more than what is currently being proposed. He's just asking to bring it up to what it's zoned for. Is that correct?
So essentially the zoning allows for an FSR. It doesn't provide for a number of units. So he can build to the maximum FSR of the building because he's got a covenant in place.
But the original covenant, which isn't included in the package, the original covenant is requires that it was a covenant that it allowed the developer to turn the industrial area into industrial live work, correct?
So the covenant, so it went through a rezoning. So the use permitted on the land is a live work use. Now the covenant allows for you to have a higher density for residential. So let me.
Higher density than the zone allows?
So the zone has a base density of 3 apartment units, but you can get a bonus density that permits an FSR of 0.7 for apartment use if you follow certain conditions. So the first one is that you enter into a covenant that secures 100% of the apartment units on the site as rental units. The second condition is that you develop and maintain pedestrian trails on the site. And then the last one is a registration of a noise advisory covenant. So they met all these conditions to allow them to build to the maximum FSR of 0.7. So the amendment, the request is that the covenant that's been registered has this number of 39, and in some interpret this as a limit for the number of units you can build, or it's got a vague interpretation that you might be able to build 39, and perhaps that these additional units would not have to be market rental.
Councillor Kroll.
And I guess this would be a question for Mr. Burtnyk. How many units are you looking to build within the footprint of the space that has been permitted?
Hello, can you hear me, David?
Yes, I can.
Okay, what we'd like to do is, under the FSR, we're allowed to build 4,900 square meters, or approximately 4,900 square meters. We haven't done full distribution on that. What we'd like to do is we're going to use our full 4,900 square meters, regardless of the types of units. So currently, we'd be looking primarily at 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units only. If there was no restriction on the unit count, then we would probably have somewhere, just round figures, upwards of 50 units. That would be a mix of studios, 1-bedrooms, 2-bedrooms, and 3-bedrooms. So regardless of the unit count, we will be looking to build the 4,900 square meters, which is permissible under the zoning. It's just how we break that up and allocate it.
Councillor Kroll.
Just as a follow-up, if you have X number of square feet and you break it into smaller units, but more units, your potential rent revenue is higher than if you had 6 units and massive square feet, because you're going to capture a certain amount of revenue because it's a single rental unit. And I would think in that area, probably smaller units like 1 and 2 bedrooms likely would be more popular than 3 bedrooms, because it's not ideally the perfect neighborhood for people who have 2 or 3 small children. I like the idea of rental. And I don't have a real issue with the density within the building being increased. Obviously we were hoping for something that would bring some lower market rental properties into the community, but with the shortage of rentals there are right now, and I'm assuming because there is no on-site management per se, that none of these would magically fall or mysteriously fall into the short-term rental category. So I don't really have an issue with the density within the footprint being increased. I like the rental.
Okay, I'd like to make a comment just regarding your revenue. Revenue is, our bigger units actually provide a better revenue. When you think of a process, a 2-bedroom unit is 1 kitchen, 1 bathroom, 2 bedrooms, whereas a 1-bedroom unit is, 1 bathroom, 1 kitchen, 1 bedroom. So our cost per unit to construct a 1-bedroom unit per square foot will most likely exceed our cost per square foot to construct a 2-bedroom unit or a 3-bedroom unit. The other thing we talked about is we're sort of on the cusp of 1 or 2 elevators, where 40 units is about as max we'd want to run on 1 elevator. So if we get a higher unit count, it gives us better justification for putting a second elevator in as well. Just because your number of residents will most likely increase. Your number of residents per unit of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom are probably going to average 1.5 either way. Those are our general thoughts on that. And again, it's just looking for more flexibility of what we can build within our allowable square footage. No change to zoning.
Okay, thank you, Julian. Mayor Beamish.
What are the community amenities we're getting on this project? Yes, Director of Planning, or Katie, do you know that?
Yeah, so when we did a rezoning for this property, the amenity was 100% rental units. So that was the affordable housing contribution. So all units are rental units, or the 39 in that building. that was proposed. They also offered land for connecting public access trails, so active transportation routes. So they connected trails and they provided rental housing.
So that connection through to Parkland is still going to be built through there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would be a condition of their building permit. So before they get the building permit to build anything on this property, they'd meet the conditions of the covenant, which includes the trail right of ways and stuff.
Right. I guess increasing it from say 39 to 50 seems to be almost another small building of tenancy, and you almost feel like you'd like to see a contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund or something, another amenity opportunity there if that could be negotiated. And I'm not, it's certainly up to Julian if he's prepared to negotiate something like that, but it's one of those areas we need support is affordable housing. If it doesn't work in terms of the numbers in this building, then maybe a contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund would work for anything over that 39 that was previously approved.
Okay, so this is where we get to, I need some clarity on whether or not we can even ask for that, Mayor Beamish. Like right now, the covenant states or the affordable housing, sorry, give me a second here. And maybe Katie could just answer without me having to look it up. But if the Affordable Housing Community Amenities Policy states that market rental is outlined in policy 3.14, the policy states that market rental units are not expected to have pricing restrictions. Basically, like I'm wondering if he's doing all rental, excuse me, can we even ask for an affordable housing contribution on top of that? Katie?
So market rental is part of our affordable housing policy. Because the developer hasn't requested any restrictions to any of the servicing requirements, and you'll be paying the full DCCs, I believe, I'm just trying to look through my staff report here. It's seen that he is providing what under the strategic plan here, he's providing safe, secure, attainable housing options. So it's one part of the housing spectrum, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Right. So it may not be affordable as determined. It's part of the affordable, spectrum of housing.
Okay. And the covenant, I assume, and this is probably an obvious question, but the covenant is stated as such that he couldn't later try to sell the units off, like they have to be kept in perpetuity as rentals?
30 years, I think.
30 years, right?
Yeah,
30 years.
There's a 30-year.
Right, I remember seeing that. Is there any other comments from anyone?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment if possible.
Sure, go ahead, Julian.
Okay, so first, I just want to be clear, we're talking about a covenant, not rezoning. And I also just want to be clear that when we did the rezoning, we met all the requirements of 3.14. And we also did community contributions of building trail network to Parkland, reconstructing the town of Gibson's trail network from Venture Way to the rec center. We also did not request any relaxations to DCCs or relaxations to our servicing requirements, or I believe 3.14 words that we can request reductions or contributions to our servicing requirements. We did not request any of those. I take that as a community contribution as well, where we're not taking any additional funds or putting any additional burdens on the town. And just in short, again, we're not asking for a rezoning. We're not asking for a different building size. We're simply asking flexibility to configure the units within the allowable square footage.
Julian, can you just, what will the square footage of the units then be? What are you bringing?
Well, we have 4,900 square meters.
Mhm.
approximately. You know, so that the square footage of the units, I would imagine, could range anywhere from, you know, say 600 up to 1400. If we had, you know, if we could fit what we could fit by correct proportions. We're doing a similar building in Wilson Creek right now with 46 units, and it's 56,000 square feet, which is very similar in square meters, about 5,000 square meters. And our units in there range from 750 to 1450. We've had very good success there. We have 8 1,450 square foot units that range from $2,250 a month to $2,450 a month. And those were our first 8 units we rented out of the building. You know, so we know there is some demand for the larger units. You know, I just, all I'm looking for is to use the flexibility within, you know, the allowable square footage in the zoning, and try find the best mix.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Kroll.
I'd like to move that the recommendation of staff be moved. You know, I think Julian, you know, has a fairly good grasp of what the market will bear. I think if we can get, you know, an increase in market, an increase in rentals in the community, it's going to help. The market is going to drive the prices of them. So, you know, what is fair market? You know, what was fair market 2 months ago and what's fair market in the new reality we're living with. I have great respect for a contractor who's, you know, building anything in this current economy. So I think he's probably got a pretty good feeling of what the market will bear, and will adjust the footprints of the units within the footprint he's allowed to suit what the market will stand. So I would like to recommend the recommendations of staff.
Okay. Does someone want to second that? Should I read it? Sorry, Lindsay, should I read?
I'll second it for discussion, but I'd still like to discuss it.
Okay.
I guess my question is, if we're increasing the density up there, does that have any impact on the parking? Is there any impact on any of the other aspects of the development that's going on?
Yeah, so increasing parking or increasing the density would change the parking configuration, but that would have to be met. So when they apply for their development permit and building permit, we would look at those requirements.
Yeah. Yeah. And Julian, let me be clear. Your understanding of the trail network is not just a connection through to the rec center, but also the connection through to Parkland. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we're rebuilding the connection to the rec center from Venture Way, which is it's an existing one but abandoned. We're constructing a new connection through our neighboring property, which we're granting I might not have the right terminology. We'll be granting either an easement or a right of way to the town that connects to Parkland and comes out near the reservoir. And we'll be also building a trail from the north property line that will join into approximately where the butcher is, as well as the curbs and roads and sidewalks, etc. on Venture Avenue or Venture Way, including the 2 buildings where the Prancing Pony is and the other grow up is, in between our property and the recycling entrance. And just to rephrase on we're not asking for an increase in density. Our square footage sets our density. We're asking to allow, you know, to allow to configure that density to the number of units it fits. So.
With a minimum of 39, correct?
With a minimum of 39.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've spoken with Katie and Leslie Ann, and we're okay with setting a minimum count of types. You know, there was some suggestion of using a percentage ratio or just stating, you know, a minimum, for example, in this report, 15 1 bedrooms, 18 2 bedrooms, 6 3 bedrooms, for example.
Okay. All right, well, we have a motion on the table. Is everyone in favor of staff's recommendations? Obviously you are, Councillor Kroll. Everyone else? I am. I guess, yeah, I'm looking to staff. All of a sudden I'm expecting you to raise your hands in this format. Right. Okay. So that was everyone, I believe. Great. Okay. Well, that passes then. All
Okay,
right.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julian.
Okay, I'm going to sign off.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Julian.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So just turning back to my agenda. We don't have any inquiries. Obviously, there's nobody else that's phoned in.
Good.
Sorry. Yes. Sorry, Lindsay.
Sorry. I don't have any, but I was just going to explain how inquiries work now. So for all of the attendees, they're muted. And so I've asked them if they have an inquiry to use the raise the hand feature, and then I'll allow them to unmute themselves. But at this time, we don't have anybody who wishes to speak.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
This Councillor Ladd, just for information, the local Connie is on the line, and so is Sean Eckford.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
But they haven't raised their hand, I take it. Hi, Connie. Hi, Sean. Okay, so our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, May 5th at Town Hall, sort of. Yes.
I'm sorry to intrude. We just had someone raise their hand.
Okay. How do I do this then?
I'm going to do it. Just 1 second. Okay, Sean, you should be live now.
Hi, I just figured I'd ask the question so that you guys could test the system and see that it actually works. Is it?
Perfect. We hear you.
That was my only question.
Thank you for testing. We appreciate that. Okay. So our next meeting then is scheduled for Tuesday, May 5th in the Town Hall Council Chambers at 3 p.m., which presumably could be online like this or actually physically in the building at this point. We don't know, correct? Right. Okay. All right. Well, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting then? Councillor Kroll, Mayor Beamish, all in favor. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay. Worked well.
John.
Yeah.